The wedding hall shimmered beneath chandeliers that looked like falling stars. Guests whispered in admiration as Sabrina Collins, the bride everyone in Seattle had been talking about, stepped into the aisle. Her white gown glistened like frost under morning light, every bead catching a reflection of perfection. Cameras flashed. Reporters smiled. Everything was flawless until one moment shattered it all. A quiet gasp rose from the back of the room. Near the buffet table, an elderly woman in a simple black service dress carried a silver tray of champagne glasses. Her hands trembled slightly under the weight. She had been helping the staff since morning, making sure everything ran smoothly for her son's big day. When one heel caught the corner of the carpet, the tray tilted, and golden liquid splashed across Sabrina's gown. For a heartbeat, time stopped. Then came the sound that silenced the music. Sabrina's hand flew across the old woman's face. A sharp slap echoed through the cathedral. The choir froze mid-note. The guests turned, eyes wide, mouths open. Crystal glasses shattered as they hit the marble floor, rolling away like fragments of someone's heart. "You ruined my dress," Sabrina shouted, voice slicing the air. "Do you have any idea how expensive this is? Get out before I have security drag you out." The elderly woman blinked, stunned. Her wrinkled hand rose to her cheek where the red mark bloomed. She bent down, trembling, to gather the broken glass, her lips quivering as she whispered, "I'm sorry, ma'am. I only wanted to help." Nobody moved. Nobody dared to breathe. And then, from the grand doors of the church, footsteps echoed. Aaron Fields, the groom, entered in his white tuxedo, smiling, unaware that the moment he walked in would change everything he believed about love, pride, and family. When he saw his mother kneeling on the marble floor, her hands shaking, and the bride towering over her with fury in her eyes, the smile on his face died instantly. Sabrina turned, startled by the sudden silence that swept the room. Her fingers still trembled from the slap. She tried to compose herself, forcing a brittle smile as if nothing had happened. Aaron's gaze locked on the red print on his mother's cheek. He didn't move for a full 10 seconds. His jaw tightened, the blood drained from his face. And in that frozen moment, every secret pride, every polished smile, every illusion of perfection crumbled. The wedding guests whispered, confused, afraid to look either at the bride or the man she had just humiliated without even realizing it. Because the woman Sabrina had just struck wasn't a servant. She was Aaron Fields' mother, Nora Fields, the woman who had raised him from nothing, who had given up everything so that this day could exist. And before the music could return, the silence broke again, this time with the sound of a heart breaking. Long before the chandeliers and marble floors, there was a tiny kitchen that smelled of bread dough and rain. Nora Fields lived in a weathered wooden house on the edge of Spokane, a quiet town where dreams were small but hearts were large. Her husband had passed when their son, Aaron, was only 5. From that day she became both mother and father, waking before sunrise to knead dough and sew clothes for neighbors just to keep the lights on. Life never gave Nora much, but she learned to create beauty out of scarcity. She patched torn coats for children, made pies for Sunday markets, and turned scraps of fabric into dresses that seemed to hold hope in every stitch. At night, when her hands ached and her eyes blurred from exhaustion, she still whispered to herself, "If my son grows up kind, then it's all worth it." Aaron was a quiet boy, sharp-eyed and endlessly curious. He often sat by the window watching his mother work, asking questions about everything. "Mom, do you ever get tired?" he once asked as she rubbed flour from her arms. Nora smiled and kissed the top of his head. "Of course I do. But tiredness means we're still trying, and trying means we haven't given up yet." There were winters when the cold crept through every crack in the wall, and Nora sold her own coat to buy medicine when Aaron got sick. Sometimes dinner was just bread and water, but she always made it feel like a feast. "Close your eyes," she'd say, "and imagine it's the best meal in the world." Aaron would laugh and play along because he didn't want her to feel ashamed. One summer, he came home waving a letter in his hand, an acceptance from a state university in Seattle. Nora couldn't read the words clearly through her tears. That night, she opened a small wooden box under her bed and took out her wedding ring, the last thing her husband had left her. She sold it quietly the next morning to pay for her son's bus ticket and a secondhand laptop. When Aaron found out, he was angry at first. "Mom, you shouldn't have sold that," Nora only smiled. "A ring is just metal, my son. But your future, that's something no one can buy for me." He promised her that day, "I'll make you proud, Mom." "One day, I'll buy you a home with windows that never leak." And she believed him not because of the promise, but because of the way he said it. There was fire in his voice, the kind she'd only ever seen in people who had nothing to lose except their faith. Years passed. Nora's back bent, her hands became rough and thin, but her spirit never changed. Every dollar she earned went toward Aaron's tuition. Every prayer she whispered at night carried his name. The neighbors pitied her sometimes. "Why work yourself to death?" they asked. She would simply reply, "Because if I stop, my son might think it's okay to give up too." The day Aaron boarded the bus to Seattle, she ran alongside it until the dust swallowed him. When it disappeared, she stood still on the road, arms wrapped around herself, as if holding her own heart together. That was the last time she saw the old wooden house. The roof leaked, the oven broke, but she didn't care. Her world had just boarded that bus. And as the city lights of Seattle grew closer for Aaron, so did the vow he carried silently in his chest. "If I ever make it, Mom will never struggle again." Seattle was nothing like Spokane. It was louder, faster, brighter, a place where dreams either soared or shattered. For Aaron Fields, it was both terrifying and thrilling. He worked part-time at a cafe, studied engineering by day, and coded late into the night on an old laptop that often overheated. But every time exhaustion crept in, he thought of his mother, her tired hands, her quiet smile, her faith that never wavered. During his final year of college, Aaron joined a research program focused on using technology to assist senior citizens. It reminded him of Nora, who sometimes forgot small things where she put her glasses or the key to the shop. The idea stayed with him. What if there was a way to help people like my mom stay independent but never feel alone? That thought became the seed of his future. After graduation, Aaron founded a small startup from his dorm room, building an app that helped elderly users track medication, navigate neighborhoods, and send quick alerts to loved ones. Investors laughed at first, calling it too sentimental. But Aaron didn't care. He wasn't building it for them, he was building it for her. Months turned into years. The app began spreading quietly across senior communities. Then, one day, a local news outlet featured his story, the son who built tech for his mother. Overnight, downloads exploded. Partnerships followed. By the time he was 30, Aaron Fields was one of the youngest CEOs in Seattle's tech scene. But instead of celebrating, he booked a ticket home. When Nora opened the door that evening, she almost didn't recognize the tall man in the suit. "Aaron?" she whispered. He smiled, holding out a bouquet of lilies, the kind she used to grow behind their old house. "I told you I'd buy you a home with windows that never leak." He moved her to Seattle soon after, into a cozy modern house with a garden filled with her favorite daisies. To everyone else, Aaron was a visionary entrepreneur. To Nora, he was still the boy who ate burnt bread and called it dinner. Every morning she woke early to make him breakfast, just as she used to. The housekeepers often tried to help, but Aaron always said the same thing: let her do what she loves. That's her way of staying alive. In the evenings they'd sit on the porch, watching the city lights shimmer like fireflies. Nora would sometimes whisper, "You've done enough, my son," and Aaron would reply softly, "Not even close." Because to him, every success, every headline, every award, all of it belonged to the woman who believed in him before the world even knew his name. It was during a charity gala for children's hospitals that Aaron first met Sabrina Collins. She was radiant under the soft glow of the ballroom lights, a woman who seemed to have stepped straight out of a magazine cover. Her laughter floated easily through conversations, and her eyes carried the effortless confidence born from privilege. Sabrina came from a well-known family in Los Angeles, owners of a luxury design brand. She'd recently opened her own boutique in Seattle and was building her name as the next fashion visionary. When she met Aaron, she already knew who he was, the tech entrepreneur who had risen from nothing. "I've heard about you," she said, smiling as cameras flashed around them. "The genius who builds apps for people who actually need them. That's rare in this city." Aaron was taken aback by her charm. She seemed grounded, kind, even humble at first. They talked for hours about philanthropy and business, but what really captured him was how she listened, or at least, seemed to. For the first time in years, he felt seen not as a CEO but as a man. When he brought Sabrina home to meet Nora, she arrived with flowers and expensive chocolates. Her tone was polite, but her eyes scanned the modest kitchen and the hand-stitched curtains with quiet disdain. Nora noticed but said nothing. She simply smiled and offered Sabrina a slice of her homemade pie. Sabrina took a small bite, smiled sweetly. then whispered later to a friend on the phone. A billionaire's mother shouldn't smell like bread dough. Aaron never heard it. He was too busy watching her smile, believing it was love. Over the following months, Sabrina wove herself into every part of his life. She organized his events, advised his wardrobe, and charmed his investors. To everyone else, she was the perfect partner, elegant, confident, supportive. But when Nora entered a room, Sabrina's warmth vanished like light behind a cloud. Nora felt it in every glance and every silence, yet she chose patience over confrontation. One evening, as she folded laundry, she told herself softly, "If she truly loves my son, she'll learn what respect means." But deep down, she knew some lessons don't come easily, especially to those who've never known humility. The morning of the wedding arrived wrapped in clouds and soft rain, the kind Seattle was famous for. It felt poetic to Aaron. Rain had always reminded him of beginnings. The cathedral gleamed with white roses, crystal chandeliers, and rows of guests dressed in silk and gold. Every moment was designed to look perfect, every detail Sabrina had planned to the last pearl. Nora Fields arrived early. She wore a simple dress she'd sewn herself from pale blue fabric, with a silver brooch she had kept since her wedding day. It was the only piece of jewelry she owned. When she walked in, no one noticed her at first. She preferred it that way. She quietly checked that the flowers were fresh, that the candles burned evenly, that her son's big day would unfold without flaw. But the staff were short-handed, and Nora had never been one to stand by when help was needed. So when the caterers rushed past with trays and glassware, she tied a plain black apron over her dress and began to assist, carrying drinks to guests, making sure every detail stayed perfect. At that same moment, Sabrina Collins stood before a mirror in a separate room, surrounded by bridesmaids and stylists. Her reflection was flawless, her gown pure white silk that shimmered with every movement. Yet behind her painted calm, there was irritation. She had noticed earlier that Nora was walking around the hall. "Why is she dressed like that?" she muttered. "Couldn't she at least wear something decent?" Her maid of honor laughed nervously, unsure what to say. Moments later, the music began, signaling the start of the ceremony. Guests stood. Cameras flashed. Sabrina's entrance was cinematic. As she walked down the aisle, heads turned in admiration. The only person who didn't look at her with awe was the elderly woman in the far corner, Nora, watching with quiet pride and trembling hands. After the vows and the applause, the reception began. Laughter filled the hall, champagne sparkled in crystal glasses, and the choir's voices rose to the vaulted ceiling. In the corner, Nora continued helping serve guests, discreet and content, until one small misstep changed everything. Her shoe caught on the carpet. The tray in her hands tilted. A few drops of champagne fell, splashing onto the lower edge of Sabrina's pristine gown. Gasps echoed. For one brief second, Nora froze, horrified. "I'm so sorry, dear, let me fix it," she said softly, reaching for a napkin. But Sabrina's expression hardened. Her voice rose, sharp and cutting. "Are you blind? Do you even know how much this dress costs?" And then, before anyone could stop her, her hand struck Nora's face. The sound cracked through the music, turning every laugh into silence. Nora stood motionless, the sting spreading across her cheek. Her hand trembled as she whispered, "I only wanted to help." Around her, the guests stared, unsure whether to intervene or pretend nothing had happened. For most, it was just a shocking scene. For Nora Fields, it was the moment her heart broke in front of the world. The sound of that slap still echoed when the heavy church doors swung open. Aaron Fields stepped inside, straightening his white tuxedo, the picture of calm pride. He had no idea that the next few seconds would shatter everything he believed about love. The hall was frozen in silence. Sabrina stood in the center, her chest rising fast, one hand still trembling. Nora was kneeling beside a cluster of broken glasses, her head slightly bowed as she tried to gather the pieces with shaking fingers. The red mark on her cheek glowed against her pale skin. Aaron's smile faded the instant he saw her. "Mom?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. The tray slipped from Nora's hands. The sound of glass hitting marble echoed like thunder. Sabrina turned at the sound of his voice. Her expression flickered from panic to denial, then back to arrogance. "Aaron, I didn't mean she was in the way. She ruined my dress," she blurted, clutching at the stained fabric like it was her dignity itself. Aaron's eyes, usually gentle, turned dark. "You hit her?" His voice carried across the entire cathedral. Guests stiffened in their seats, whispering in disbelief. I thought she was one of the servers. Sabrina stammered, desperate to explain. She shouldn't have been near me. Look at my gown. Aaron's jaw tightened. That woman, he said slowly, pointing at Nora, is my mother. The words fell heavy, slicing through the air like a blade. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A photographer lowered his camera, a bridesmaid covered her mouth. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God." Sabrina's eyes widened. Your mother, she repeated, her voice cracking. I didn't know. Aaron's voice deepened, trembling with controlled fury. You didn't know because you never cared enough to find out. No one dared move. Even the choir stood frozen, their hymn books half open. Aaron walked to his mother and knelt beside her, gently lifting her trembling hands away from the broken glass. Mom, are you hurt? He asked softly. Nora shook her head, forcing a small smile that broke his heart even more. It's all right, son. Let's not make a scene. But the scene had already been made. The world had just witnessed a bride slap her future mother-in-law, and the groom standing at the altar could no longer recognize the woman he was about to marry. By nightfall, the story had already escaped the walls of the cathedral. A guest's video of the slap hit social media, and within hours it spread like wildfire. Bride slaps elderly woman at her own wedding, the headline read. By morning, every news outlet in Seattle carried the story with one chilling update. The woman in the video was the groom's mother. Public opinion turned fast. Sabrina's once envied image as a fashion icon dissolved overnight. Her brand sponsors withdrew, magazines canceled interviews, comment sections flooded with outrage. How can someone so beautiful be so cruel? She hit his mother. What kind of heartless woman does that? Sabrina tried to hide from the cameras, but they found her everywhere outside her apartment, her store, her family's estate. Every lens captured the same picture, a woman once adored, now shattered by her own arrogance. Meanwhile, Aaron refused every interview request. He stayed silent, spending his days with Nora in their quiet home on the edge of the city. The only sound in that house was the soft ticking of the clock and the rain tapping against the windows. Sometimes he looked at his mother's face, still faintly marked, and anger surged again. But Nora would always stop him with a gentle look. Don't let hatred grow roots, my son. It will choke the good in you. A week later, Aaron broke his silence. He held a small press conference standing beside his mother. Chimeras flashed as he spoke with steady composure. Respect for parents isn't an old tradition, it's the foundation of who we are. Wealth and status mean nothing if you forget that. Then he made it official. He was filing charges against Sabrina Collins for public humiliation and elder abuse. His words echoed through the room. No one, no matter how rich or famous, has the right to disgrace another human being. The courtroom filled when the hearing began. Sabrina appeared dressed in gray, her confidence gone. She cried and apologized, but the judge's verdict was clear. She would perform community service at a senior care center for 1 year and was prohibited from contacting Aaron or his mother. When the decision was announced, Nora simply closed her eyes. She felt no victory, only sorrow that things had fallen so far. Because in her heart, revenge was never the goal, only respect. Months passed, and life slowly settled into quiet rhythm again. The scandal faded from headlines, replaced by newer stories and fleeting distractions. But for Nora Fields, some wounds didn't heal with time. They softened, yet stayed deep. She often sat by the window with her tea, watching the city lights blur against the drizzle, wondering what had become of Sabrina. One chilly afternoon, while visiting a senior care center to deliver donated blankets, Nora saw a familiar figure at the far end of the hall. A young woman in a gray volunteer uniform was helping an elderly man adjust his wheelchair. The woman's once luxurious hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. Her face was thinner, her eyes quieter. It was Sabrina Collins. For a moment Nora froze. The memory of that slap flashed before her eyes, the sting, the silence, the humiliation. But as she looked closer, she saw something else. Sabrina's hands were steady, her tone gentle. When she noticed Nora standing there, she went pale, then slowly walked forward, eyes wet with tears. Mrs. Fields, her voice trembled. I didn't think you'd ever want to see me again. Nora didn't answer at first. The air between them felt heavy with everything unspoken. Sabrina swallowed hard. I know I can't undo what I did. I don't ask for forgiveness. I just need you to know I'm sorry, truly. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of a radio playing an old song in the background. Nora finally stepped closer, her kind eyes soft but firm. She placed a hand on Sabrina's shoulder and said gently, "You did wrong. But wrong can teach us what right truly means. What matters is what you do with the rest of your life." Sabrina broke down, sobbing quietly. "I've lost everything," she whispered. Nora nodded. "Then maybe it's time to build something better, starting with yourself." And as the two women stood there, the past loosened its grip. Forgiveness, small and fragile, began to bloom in the space where pride had once lived. That evening, when Nora returned home, Aaron was on the porch repairing a loose fence hinge. He looked up as she approached, the sunset painting soft gold across her gray hair. "You were out longer than usual," he said, setting the tool aside. "Everything okay?" Nora smiled faintly. "I visited the senior care center. I saw her there, Sabrina." Aaron's hand froze. "You talked to her?" "I did," she said softly. "She's not the same woman anymore. Life has humbled her." Aaron leaned back against the railing, his brow furrowing. "I don't know if I could ever forgive her for what she did to you." Nora looked out toward the horizon where the light met the clouds. "Forgiveness isn't for her, son. It's for us. If I don't forgive, my heart stays chained to that day. And if I'm still trapped there, then she still owns a piece of me. I won't let anger take that from me, too." Aaron was quiet for a long time. The rain had stopped, leaving a clean scent in the air. He finally said, "You've always been stronger than me, Mom." She laughed softly. "No, Aaron. I just learned that strength isn't about holding grudges, it's about knowing when to let go." Inside, the small house felt warm. Dinner was simple vegetable soup, bread, and 2 cups of tea. They ate in comfortable silence. The world outside buzzed with ambition and noise, but within those 4 walls, peace lingered like a gentle hymn. As the night deepened, Nora sat by the window, watching raindrops slide down the glass. Aaron joined her, resting his hand over hers. "Do you ever wish things had gone differently?" he asked. Nora thought for a moment. "No, because pain is a teacher too. That slap hurt my face, but it opened her eyes and reminded the world of something we keep forgetting." "What's that?" he asked quietly. "That money builds houses, but respect builds homes. Success means nothing if gratitude is gone." Aaron nodded, the truth settling in his chest like a quiet fire. "You know, I canceled a wedding that day," he said, half smiling, "but I think it was really a lesson disguised as heartbreak." Nora reached over and patted his hand. Heartbreaks can be blessings if they make us kinder. Outside, the city shimmered under the streetlights. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of church bells drifted through the mist, soft, steady, forgiving. The camera would have lingered there if this were a film on a mother and son sitting side by side, 2 silhouettes against a glowing window, the world outside still spinning but their hearts finally still. And if the story had to leave one message behind, it would be this: a mother's worth cannot be measured by wealth or status. Her wrinkles are the map of every sacrifice that built us. Her silence carries the weight of love no diamond can match. So, if your parents are still alive, don't wait for a special day. Send them a message, 3 simple words that can heal years of distance. "I love you, Mom." Because sometimes the simplest words are the ones they've been waiting their whole life to hear. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this story. Some wounds fade, but the lessons they leave behind never do. Nora and Aaron's story isn't just about humiliation or forgiveness, it's about remembering where we come from and the hands that shaped us. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll away. Leave a comment below, tell us where you're watching from, and share one thing your parents taught you that still guides your life today. Hit like if you believe gratitude is stronger than pride. Subscribe to The Art of Revenge for more stories that remind us the truest victories aren't about revenge, they're about redemption. And tonight, before you sleep, whisper the words every parent deserves to hear. I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad. Because forgiveness may end a story, but love is what keeps it alive.